So we'll be live soon. It's starting to upload, it says. Excellent. Okay, so we are live now. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the Formlabs User Summit event. I hope that you're enjoying all the sessions happening today. Now we have the chance to have this one-on-one discussion with Dr. Burton that's present today as part of this materials breakout table, where we'll be talking about the new resin that is draft resin used for dental applications. So if you haven't seen it yet, today we launched a new exciting material that is used for engineering applications, but also it's very promising for dental applications. So overall, today we have the privilege of talking of this new material that it's going to be an excellent solution for printing fast and accurate orthodontic models that we can use to produce thermoformed clear aligners and retainers. So this really unlocks a new possibility with this new material, not only because this is a new material added to the portfolio, but also because it has a drastically increased the productivity. The overall printing time is reduced drastically. And today we're going to be talking, aside from the new material, we're going to be talking about the experience in a user's hand. So today with us we have Dr. J. Burton. He's a dentist and board-certified orthodontist. He's a global thought leader. He lectures globally about 3D imaging and how to use 3D printing for orthodontic applications, also in the general field of diagnostics. He has his private practice in Nashville, Tennessee. So he, as you see, he has taken time from his overall practice today, and he is between patient and patient, he made the time to have this conversation with us. So we're thrilled to have you here, Dr. Burton. Welcome to the session.
Thank you very much, Elisa. I appreciate it.
Excellent. So overall, I just wanted to start this session by asking you, because it will be useful for everyone connecting on the other side, a little bit about if you can tell us what your practice looks like and how are you currently using 3D printing?
So my journey into 3D printing started about 4 to 5 years ago. I became pretty frustrated with aligner manufacturers and the quality of the lab tech that I was working with, and just the inability to have full control over the aligner process. And so I started looking at other options. And at that point in time, if you were looking at doing 3D printing in the dental office, you had some very expensive 3D printer options that were essentially, it made it where it was like, there was enough of an unknown that I wasn't willing to kind of roll the dice. And then I ran across the Formlabs printer, did some reading on accuracy of it, and thought to myself, well, if it's that accurate, maybe I could use it in office. And then the price point was low enough to where I was like, okay, I'm willing to roll the dice on this and see if I can essentially create my own in-house or in-office aligner solution, because I had the software to do it. The piece that I was missing was the printer. And when Formlabs came out with the Form 2, the price point was such, and accuracy was such, that I said, okay, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to try this and see how it works for my office. And then I went from one Form 2 to 2 Form 2s to, I think at one point I had 3 Form 2s, one of which has now been replaced with a Form 3, and then I've got another Form 3B. So I've slowly kind of grown my aligner production in my office. At first, I started out treating easier cases, and then took on more moderate cases, and now I'll pretty much try any case with in-office aligners. And for the most part, other than just dabbling with some of the larger aligner companies to kind of stay abreast of the changes that are taking place in the market, I rarely send out cases to third-party aligner companies other than just to stay abreast of what's going on. So in my office, it's pretty much all aligner related. Some doctors will print like study models to discuss with the patient. But I find that my biggest return on investment, my biggest use by far, has been the printing of models for aligner production.
Excellent. Thank you so much for providing some context. As we are dental patients, maybe we have dental professionals today in the audience, but also for people that are from other fields that are connecting today, this is super important. And you can see that maybe one material that is used also for engineering, as we're going to see today, is used for dental applications, as Dr. Burton is explaining. 3D printing is a great solution in dentistry, and orthodontics field is a specialty that it's particularly having a benefit from this overall technology and materials and applications. So I don't know, Dr. Burton, if you want to share, like, I know that you prepared some slides for today, but maybe we can explain a little bit more about the process, because how does this look like overall from the aligner process, like, then before getting deep dive into the new material?
Yeah, I think, it's important for our colleagues out there that maybe haven't gotten into in-office aligner production, or for those that aren't dentists that are in the audience, just to understand the overall process and how it works. It starts pretty much the same way any orthodontic consultation would, and that's with a clinical exam, and then taking records on the patient. And that's really where things start to separate from normal orthodontic office flow. At that point, the STL files that are generated from the intraoral scan are usually uploaded to Mesh Mixer, where we can do some adjustments on those, clean those models up, and then you can import that into whatever aligner software that you use. I use Ortho Studio. And then that's where you digitally set up the case, determine how the teeth are going to move, what attachments you're going to place, whether or not you need to do interproximal reduction, and then stage out the models. And once you stage the models out, you export those files. And with those exported files, we'll print using preform software. And the nice thing about Formlabs, I think one of the best thing about Formlabs is just how user-friendly the printers are and the software is. Because most of the time, it's not the doctor that's doing the printing. It's usually the assistants in the office that are responsible for putting the files in preform, hitting print, post-processing of the print, and getting things ready for the patient. So the user friendliness, as kind of a side note, is really, really important in dental office. But at that point, I'm printing, most of my models now are printed on the Form 3. They're then post-processed, alcohol bath, and then cured. And then we use a thermoforming process where a sheet of plastic is heated, and then through the application of pressure, it's formed to the shape of the model. And then at that point, the model's trimmed off of at that point, the plastic is trimmed off of the model, and you've got a tray that's rough, at which point it's smoothed up, and then it's ready for delivery to the patient. And so let's skip here a couple slides. So here's what a model would look like. And you can see the layers in there. You can see some of the big bumps on the outside of the teeth. We refer to those as attachments, and they can be different shapes, different sizes, depending upon the type of movement that we need to have take place. But yeah, that's kind of the overall process. And then here's kind of the final product of an aligner that's been formed and then cut off of the model and then smoothed out and ready to be packaged for the patient.
One question, Dr. Burton, can you tell us a little bit, like, in which layer height setting was, in this case, is this draft resin for the new generation, the material was on today, in which layer height setting was it printed overall?
This one was printed at, and this is the new latest and greatest draft resin, and it's printed at 200 micron layers.
Excellent. Yeah. So as Dr. Burton was saying, he's the user for Formlabs for a lot of years now. He has started printing also with gray resin, which was indicated for model production. So can you tell us, Dr. Burton, a little bit more like how, for example, does this material compare to gray that you were using before, and also draft, the previous generation, because I know that you were also using that. Can you explain a little bit comparison, your perspective about this new material?
Yeah, so I did. There's a couple things difference, and some of this I've just recently learned. But the draft version 2 resin that we're talking about today, it prints at 200 micron layers instead of 300 micron layers. The previous version of draft was it was a blue resin, which I like the color blue, and it was kind of cool having some blue models in the office. But one of the downsides with that material, when you went to cut the thermoform plastic off of the model, it had a tendency to melt, whereas the gray resin did not. And then that was one of the nice things about the version 2 of draft that we're talking about today, is when you go to cut that off the model, it doesn't melt like the blue resin melted. And the downside with it melting while you're cutting it is it essentially makes it much more difficult to get the thermoform plastic off of the model and to the point where you can smooth it up for the patient to use. So the other big difference is the time difference, which is pretty significant. I can print one model in easily less than 20 minutes. I printed, you see the build there on the left of the screen. I printed 6 models in 40 minutes using this version 2 of the draft. If I had done that in the blue draft material version 1 at 300 micron layers, it would have taken just a little over an hour. And if I had printed that same print with regular gray version 4 resin, it would have taken over 2 hours to print. So from a time perspective, you can print significantly more with the second version of draft compared to either the first version, and certainly compared to the standard gray resin, which I would say most dental offices are using for their aligner production.
Excellent. So this is a very interesting point, because this is one of the assets of this new material. As we see here, this is a clear example of a case that you were showing today of the print speed overall. This actually, it is a significant difference overall. So I know that, for example, from a practice management perspective, a lot of orthodontists, I know that also yourself, Dr. Burton, are used to printing overall models during the night, and maybe combining also not only night printing, but also vertical model printing. So as a matter of practice structure, this is also something to consider. And how does your workflow change now with this new material? What new possibilities can it potentially bring, the speed improvements from your perspective?
Yeah, so the biggest opportunity is, I think, in the ability to deliver retainers and or aligners same day for the patient. So I can scan the patient, digitally set it up, with the patient in the chair, print, be working on some other things, and then post-process that. And easily within an hour, I can deliver either their first set of aligners or their final retainers with using this material. The version 1, the blue draft resin, though it was good and it allowed you to, I guess, do same day delivery, the layer height was a little bit thicker and it was more apparent. I'm not going to say it was like significantly apparent. I think there's several aligner manufacturers out there that still use a 300 micron layer height for their printed models, but it's certainly more apparent than, say, the 200 micron or the 160 micron that our patients in our office has basically become used to. So I think it opens up the possibility of same day delivery. So the same day that you scan the patient, you can deliver something to them. It also, I think, makes the office a little bit more flexible, so that if something does happen, if a patient realizes, oh, well, I was originally scheduled to come in tomorrow, which would mean that we would print it today. They call and say, oh, I had a mix up in my schedule. Can I come in today? Historically, it'd be like, well, no, we're going to have to put you out, to the next available appointment. Now it's like, yeah, go ahead and come in. We'll just, hit print on the printer now. And by the time you get here, your model or models will be printed and we can make those chairside. So I think it opens up some opportunities for patient care and flexibility that previously weren't available.
Excellent. I think that this is a very, very important point. I know that also, like, maybe some orthodontists that are connected today have been using gray because of, as we mentioned, the layer lines being less visible, and for patient aesthetics, sometimes it is a little bit of a concern because of course they are reaching out to our orthodontic specialists for this type of treatment because of its aesthetic assets. So there are some high requirements also from the aligner being delivered, aside that it's an overall aesthetic orthodontic treatment plan. So I think that this is, it's super important to bear in mind. And but the new resin also, it's going to be available in 100 microns layer height setting, which is also going to be a nice opportunity. But you were going to also share something more regarding speed and workflow, I guess.
Yeah, I will. So historically, I've always been pleased with the print time for either 4 or 6 models printed horizontally using the standard gray resin, because it just fit within my office workflow. The only time I ever ran into a problem with that was, if a patient wanted to move an appointment up, or if for some reason a print failed overnight and the patient was going to come in the next day or something along those lines. So I think the new resin allows for the opportunity to basically cover any mistakes that may happen in an office. And I mean, we're all human, things are going to happen, models are going to break, prints are going to fail. It's just part of it. But this new material allows us to compensate for some of those mistakes or failures. And then from a standard workflow procedure, most of the time, what I'm delivering for the patient is printed at least a couple days in advance. And then my normal processes are I hit print on the printer in the morning. And then with the standard gray resin, anywhere from 2 to 3 hours later, it would be finished printing. At lunchtime, the assistants would then process those models, hit print for the next models to be printed. And then before they leave that day, they post-process those models. They hit print overnight. Morning, they come in. And so it basically broke my day up where speed wasn't a big issue, other than for same-day retainer delivery and if I wanted to do same-day aligner delivery. So I think where this new resin comes in handy is now if you wanted, you could do multiple prints within that time frame, assuming you had the staff and the assistants to manage that process for you.
Excellent. So another important thing aside like speed, because one of the characteristics, of course, of the SLA printing process, it's the accuracy and very nice surface finish. And now it's combined that excellence of accuracy for dental applications overall that we know is characteristic for multiple applications, but also now combined with a material that allows to print to actually print models in a super fast way. So can you tell us a little bit more how accuracy is also important for orthodontic applications, also aside combining this with improved speed?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever I have this conversation with general dentists and other specialists, it's like, oh, well, ortho doesn't have to be that accurate. And if you're comparing that to like the margins that you would need to seat a crown, yeah, you're correct. But where my problem with accuracy has been, or where I've had the biggest issue, not so much with Formlabs, but it's just in general, is if the arch form or the arch shape is off, then you're going to have issues with arch coordination towards the end of treatment. So if you're off, let's say 200 microns at the molars, then that's going to affect how the teeth are going to interdigitate, how they're going to fit together, whether or not they're going to have a heavy contact or not based on what you've planned. So I think, maybe we don't have the same requirements as Crown and Bridge may have or as Restorative may have, but we also can't have the lackadaisical attitude that accuracy and isn't an issue for orthodontics. And this is an area where I was very pleased to find out that the version 2 of the draft is actually more accurate than the standard gray resin. So as soon as, I guess it's available now. I will be going forward ordering the gray draft resin for pretty much all of my cases. It just gives me more flexibility with regard to same-day delivery and same-day retainer delivery, and then also knowing that it's more accurate than even the gray resin was, I think is just a bonus.
Excellent. Yeah. So this is a very important point overall regarding the importance of accuracy. I mean, we are a very specialized and meticulous profession in dentistry overall. So accuracy is always a core part of our profession. We are almost like perfectionists in what we do. And although, of course, for a fitment of a crown, the adaptation to the tooth preparation, the margins is critical. Also, as you were mentioning, this cross arch and accuracy and not deformation within the molars that can alter the part, it's super critical. So yeah, and also to add this, images of heat maps and accuracy, those were Form 2. So just to share a little bit with the audience connecting. So the new material printed into a model, for example, printed in 200 microns layer height setting with Draft V2 actually shows that when we do internal testing and with a heat map, 98% of the surfaces are within 100 microns of actual scans. So this is even more accurate than, for example, Gray 160 that delivered accuracy, a 93% accuracy. So this actually, it is a very nice asset that we're still preserving accuracy, even going beyond like what was our normal standard of recommendation for aligners of Gray 160 to, for example, Draft 200. Again, there's also a possibility of Draft 100 microns. So just to let you know that there's also going to be a possibility for example, if the layer heights or visibility of the layer lines is critical, this is also going to be an option, but it still will be a fast printing solution while still preserving accuracy overall. So Dr. Burton, any like other takeaway message that, for example, other orthodontists that maybe are currently using Gray 160, any final takeaway message that you would like to share with them about this new material or a piece of advice?
Yeah, if you do print hollow models, like the one that I showed on the screen, you can see this is hollowed out. This one was actually, I think I used ULab for the production of the STL file. When you go to remove it from the build plate, because you've got the little notch here, you got to be really careful when you're separating it in the posterior to make sure that it doesn't crack back by the first molar. So removing it from the build plate, you just got to be a little more careful than say you would with, I think, the standard gray resin, or at least, and that's my feeling. I don't know that there's any data to back that up, but I just feel like it's a little bit more, and not much, but just a little bit more fragile than say the standard gray resin. And if my assistant was like, well, why are you printing hollow? And I'm like, to save money. And she was like, well, I wish you wouldn't print hollow because then I don't have to worry about it. And she's talking about the draft resin. So I think, having that little notch right there, and that's just this aligner company that I was using, that's where they put the little draining notch. I think it increases the likelihood of a fracture of the horseshoe model when you're removing it from the build plate. I think if you reposition that somewhere else, it might not be as big of an issue, or if you just printed a solid model, might not be as big of an issue. So some things to think about.
Excellent. Well, these are all great insights. Again, I think I also have like a draft model myself, but also I think that it's not going to be that much visible with the slight conditions, but it's even like myself testing it internally, I think it was a super nice surprise to see this material printing super fast and being able to do the post-processing, because that is actually one other thing that I was, before closing the session and moving to Q&A, the post-processing overall changes because it is now, for example, if you print a model in approximately 18 minutes and consider a 10-minute washing, the curing actually is reduced to only 5 minutes of UV light exposure without temperature. So that is actually something I wanted to ask you, like from the post-processing perspective, did you see also a difference with gray?
I'll be honest with you, I am not overly involved in the post-processing of the model. But so I'm getting some of this information secondhand from my assistants, other than when I go in there to tinker around, and they usually try to keep me out of the lab because they know that I'm in there tinkering around and I'm going to change something. So as far as they're concerned, there's not a significant change in their workflow because with the form wash, it's almost like if anybody remembers the Ronco food dehydrator and rotisserie of it, it's like you set it and forget it. And that's kind of the same thing with the wash, the form wash and the form Q. It's like you just set it and you forget it, and it's just kind of the thing. If you're doing same day and you're in let's say an hour or a 40-minute time slot, then yeah, you're going to have somebody monitoring that process, making sure that it comes out, that it's not sticky when it's comes out of the alcohol bath and all that good stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm getting equally great models in a shorter amount of time, which increases the flexibility and opportunities within the office.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that it's a very nice take-home message. And also that your dental assistants you delegate that part of the workflow, which again, I think it explains the overall flexibility and ease of use of the printer and post-processing stages that allow us, like clinicians, to be more time delivering or seeing patients, while we can delegate some of the steps to our dental team, and that they might be, instead of dealing with standard plaster protocols, that they can adopt this workflow in the most easy way overall.
Yeah, and I've got several friends that have other printers in their office, and I'll talk to them and they'll complain about, how difficult it is to use and how they're having to manage this process and do all of this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, like, number one, I'm glad I'm not having to do that, but I'm thankful that Formlabs has put the work on the back end to make things easy to use, knowing that you basically, you're not going to have a bunch of PhDs or doctors sitting in a room with the printers that are printing it, because at that point it becomes the return on investment isn't as high as it can be. The nice thing with Formlabs and the user friendliness of it, you can delegate it, and that's where there's not any other product you can buy for your office that will give you the return on investment that a Formlabs 3D printer will give you, period.
Excellent. Well, this is a very nice takeaway message. I know that we have people connected, so if we have a Q&A section, let us know if you have any questions in the next minute or two. So we know that if there's any interest, or if you want to ask something to Dr. Burton specifically, it's your time. Otherwise, he will continue with his daily activities and seeing some patients in the afternoon overall. So I will be checking the questions right now if there are any Q&A. Maybe we have a shy audience today, but I hope that you can also tell us in the chat if you like this session or if it was interesting for you. I think that this is just the beginning. Dr. Burton was a beta tester of this resin and early user and adopter. So I think that we're going to see also the delivery in any clinical case that you have done, Dr. Burton, in the future, like, for example, placing an aligner or a retainer that was thermoformed upon this material. How was the clinical fit overall, if you already had experience with that?
Well, yes, I have. And that's a really good question. I should have talked about it before. Because I didn't know what the accuracy numbers were for the draft version 2. So when I was the first couple of cases that I printed with it, I printed on draft version 2, and I printed on the standard gray resin as a backup. And tried both in myself just to see, can I feel a difference? Am I going to be able to see that the arch, maybe the arch form isn't what it should be, or am I going to be able to see inaccuracies, or basically see that it's not as accurate as the standard gray resin, because that's kind of become my gold standard. And I could tell no difference between the fit, the feel of the trays, between the standard gray and then the draft gray version 2. There was no significant difference in delivery, patient feel of the thermoformed aligners, the ability to deal with the aligners, like I said, improved from the blue draft material, just because of the melting of that material when you're cutting the tray out. So I've only seen positive things as a result of using the version 2 draft compared to both the standard gray resin and the blue draft resin. Excellent.
That's I think for us, because we know that this material is excellent for printing overall, but also we know that it's an intermediate step to thermoform the final appliance that will effectively go in our patient's mouth in the end. So I think that is we can still deliver a super accurate device, that the overall printing time or intermediate steps are still cost effective, and a fast solution was to preserving that accuracy. Yeah. So I think that this was all very useful insights for all of us today, based on your firsthand experience. I think that we don't have any questions as far, but you answered very thoroughly each one of the questions that we asked today. So I just want to say thank you, Dr. Burton, for sharing this experience and being the beta tester for this material. And we're very much looking forward how future cases evolve with the production of appliances using draft V2 resin as an intermediate step. Awesome. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for the audience for connecting today. And let us know if you have any questions also after the session. Feel free to reach out to any Formlabs representative or us from the team to clarify any further questions that might arise in the couple of next days. Okay? Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Burton. And awesome. Thank you so much for everyone. Have a nice day.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.